I was 14 years old when I learned that the scariest monsters don't break down your door. They wait for you to forget to lock it. And sometimes, they're already inside before you even realize the danger. This is what happened to me on a night that changed everything. Being an only child meant I was pretty used to being home alone. It wasn't unusual or scary, just normal. Every day after school, I'd come home to an empty house for a few hours while my parents finished work. It was actually kind of nice. I had freedom, privacy, time to just be myself. But this particular Friday was different. My parents had told me they'd be gone longer than usual, way longer. One of them had some work dinner event, and they were both going straight there after their shifts. They wouldn't be back until 9 or 10 that night, maybe even later. They left me money for pizza delivery and told me to have fun. Honestly, I was excited. A whole evening to myself meant unlimited video games, whatever I wanted to watch on TV, and pizza. What more could a 14-year-old want? When I got home from school that afternoon, I went straight up to my room, backpack on the floor, shoes kicked off, controller in hand. I started gaming immediately. Time passed the way it always does when you're having fun. Too fast. Eventually, I got hungry and went downstairs for a bit, grabbed some snacks, watched some TV in the living room. But my stomach kept growling, reminding me about that pizza money. I checked the time. It was around 7 o'clock. Perfect timing. I ordered a large pepperoni, my favorite. The delivery guy showed up maybe 30 minutes later. I heard the doorbell, ran downstairs, and opened the front door. He handed me the pizza. I paid him with the money my parents left. We exchanged the usual pleasantries. Thanks, have a good night. That sort of thing. Then I took my pizza and headed back upstairs to my room. This is where everything changed. I was sitting in my gaming chair, pizza box open beside me, controller back in my hands. The game was loading. My room was dark, except for the glow of the TV screen. I liked it that way. It made the game feel more immersive, more real. But then I heard something. The front door opening. I froze instantly. Controller still in my hands, but no longer moving. The house had been completely silent except for my game and the low volume of the TV I'd left on downstairs. So when the door opened, I heard it clearly, crystal clear. My first thought was obvious. It had to be my parents coming home early. But two things immediately felt wrong. First, they were supposed to be back this early, not even close. If something had changed, if the dinner got cancelled or whatever, they would have texted me. They always did. I pulled out my phone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. Second, and this one made my blood run cold, I didn't hear them unlock the door. I'd heard the door open, but no key turning in the lock first, no jingling of keys. No familiar sound of the deadbolt sliding back. The door had just opened, like it was already unlocked. That's when the memory hit me like a punch to the gut. The pizza delivery guy. When I'd answered the door, gotten my pizza, paid him, I just walked back inside and closed the door behind me. But I couldn't remember locking it. I tried to think back, to visualize my hands turning the lock, but the memory wouldn't come, because I was pretty sure I hadn't done it. I'd been too focused on getting back to my game, on eating my pizza when it was still hot. And now, someone was in my house. I listened carefully. My game was paused now. The TV downstairs was still on, but the volume was low enough that I could hear other sounds. And I definitely heard them. Footsteps. Someone was walking through my house. Not casually like they belonged there. Not calling out my name like a parent would. just walking, slowly, deliberately, moving deeper inside. I couldn't hear very well from upstairs in my bedroom with the door partly open, but I could hear enough to know that whoever it was, they were getting closer to the staircase, closer to me. My mind raced through options. Should I yell? Ask if it's Mum or Dad? But what if it wasn't them? What if yelling just let this person know exactly where I was? Should I try to sound threatening? Yell something tough to scare them away? But I was a skinny 14-year-old kid with zero fighting skills. I didn't even have anything in my room that could work as a weapon. What was I going to do? Throw a controller at them? The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. Then they started climbing. Each step up was like a countdown. Each creak of the wood was another second closer to what? I didn't know, and that made it so much worse. I sat in my gaming chair, completely frozen, not from a decision to stay still, but from pure terror. My bedroom was the second door on the left once you got to the top of the stairs, and my door wasn't closed all the way. It was open about a foot, just enough. When the footsteps reached the top of the stairs, I finally had a thought that made sense. Close the door. Lock it. At least create a barrier between me and whoever this was. But I didn't move. It felt too late. My door had no lock anyway, and if I moved now, if I got up and pushed the door closed, they would see it happening. They would hear it. The door would creak. My chair would roll. I would give myself away completely. So I just sat there. The way my door opened meant that even though this person was now in the upstairs hallway, I couldn't see them, and they couldn't see me. Not yet. The door blocked our view of each other, but I could hear them clearly now. They were walking down the hallway, slow but steady, not hesitating, not searching, just walking with purpose, getting closer to my room. I was still sitting in my chair. I don't know if I was frozen with fear or if I'd made some unconscious calculation that moving would be worse. Part of me wanted to hide, under the bed, in the closet, anywhere that would get me out of sight. But moving now would make too much noise. They would hear me. The one advantage I had, the only advantage, was that my bedroom lights were off. I always gamed in the dark, and I'd paused my game shortly after hearing the front door open, so that wasn't making any sound either. Maybe, just maybe, if this person looked in my room, they'd think it was empty. The footsteps were right outside my door now. Then, through the 1-foot gap where my door was open, I saw something move. A shadow first, then part of a person. They came into view in that narrow space. I could only see a portion of them, just a slice of their body as they passed. I looked away immediately. Pure instinct. If I could see them, maybe they could see me. Maybe eye contact would trigger something. I stared at the floor, at my feet, at anything but that door. I was certain this was it. They were going to push the door open the rest of the way. They were going to see me. And then, I had no idea what would happen. Nothing good. But the door didn't open. The footsteps moved past my room. I heard them continue down the hallway. And then, after a pause that felt like an eternity, I heard them start going back down the stairs. Whoever it was, they were leaving. But now they were moving faster. Not running, but definitely walking quicker than they had on the way up. Like they'd realized something. Like they'd heard or seen something that made them want to get out. I didn't move from my chair. I barely breathed. I listened as the footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, crossed toward the front door, and then finally, I heard the door open and close. They were gone. I counted to 10 in my head. Then I counted to 10 again. Then I finally moved. I ran downstairs as fast as I could. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I got to the front door and immediately locked it. Deadbolt, chain, everything. Then I ran to the windows and looked outside. Nobody. No car driving away. No person walking down the street. Nothing. Whoever it was had completely disappeared. I checked every window in the house. Front, back, sides. All the doors. Everything was secure now. But that didn't make me feel any better, because I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Someone had walked into my house, climbed my stairs, stood outside my bedroom door, and then left. Why? What did they want? Did they know someone was home? Did they see the lights, hear the TV, and decide to leave? Or were they looking for something specific and just didn't find it? I grabbed my phone and called my parents. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. When my mom answered, I could barely get the words out. She told me they were leaving right away. They'd be home in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. I sat on the couch in the living room with all the lights on, staring at the front door. Part of me was terrified the person would come back. Part of me was terrified they'd never left at all. That they were still somewhere in the house, hiding, waiting. When my parents finally got home, I'd never been so relieved to see anyone in my entire life. My parents called the police immediately. 2 officers showed up about 15 minutes later. They searched the entire house, every room, every closet, under every bed. Nothing was missing. Nothing was disturbed. No sign that anyone had been there except for my testimony. I told them everything. The unlocked door, the footsteps, the shadow passing by my room. They took notes and asked questions, but I could tell they weren't sure what to make of it. No evidence of a break-in. Nothing stolen. No clear signs of intent. One officer asked me if I'd gotten a good look at the person. I hadn't, just a glimpse. Not enough to identify them. Not enough to say if it was a man or woman. Just a shape. A presence. The other officer suggested it might have been someone who thought the house was empty, saw an unlocked door, and walked in to see if there was anything worth taking. When they realized someone was home, they left, quick and quiet, to avoid confrontation. That made sense. Sort of. But it didn't explain why they'd come upstairs. If you're trying to rob an empty house and you hear a TV on, wouldn't you assume someone's home and leave immediately? Why walk through the first floor, climb the stairs, and walk past multiple rooms? Unless they were looking for something specific. Or unless they knew I was home alone, and young, and vulnerable. That thought made my skin crawl. The police told my parents they'd increase patrols in the neighborhood for the next few days.
They told me I'd done the right thing by staying quiet and not confronting the person. They said I was lucky. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt violated, scared, paranoid. After the police left, my dad went through the house and checked every lock, every window latch, every possible entry point. He even installed a chain lock on my bedroom door, something I could lock from the inside if I ever felt unsafe again. My mum asked if I wanted to sleep in their room that night. I was 14 and definitely too old for that, but I almost said yes. Almost. Instead, I just nodded and said I'd be okay. I wasn't okay. For weeks after that night, I couldn't be home alone. Not in the afternoon after school. Definitely not at night. The thought of being in that house by myself made my chest tight and my hands clammy. My parents worked it out so one of them could work from home in the afternoons, when they had to both be out. I'd go to a friend's house or my grandparents' place, anywhere but home alone. At night, I started keeping my bedroom door closed and locked with that new chain lock. I'd check it multiple times before bed, pull on it to make sure it was secure. Then I'd lie awake for hours, listening to every sound the house made. Old houses make a lot of sounds, settling foundations, wind against windows, the furnace kicking on. Sounds I'd never noticed before suddenly became potential threats. Was that a door opening? Footsteps on the stairs? Someone in the hallway? I grab my phone and pull up the emergency call screen, thumb hovering over the 9, ready to dial 911 at the first sign of real danger. But the danger never came. It was always just the house being a house. Eventually, slowly, the fear started to fade, not disappear, just fade into something manageable, something I could live with. I started staying home alone again, first just for an hour or two in the afternoon, then longer, then eventually overnight when my parents went out. But I never forgot, and I never, ever forgot to lock the door. Even now, years later, I still think about that night, still wonder about the person who walked into my house. Who were they? What did they want? And most importantly, why did they leave? Part of me thinks the officer was right. It was just an opportunistic burglar who got spooked when they realized someone was home. They left because they didn't want confrontation. They left because there was nothing worth the risk. But another part of me wonders if there was more to it. Why did they come upstairs? If you're a burglar, you check the first floor, grab the TV, the laptop, whatever's easy to carry. You don't go upstairs unless you're looking for something specific. Jewelry, maybe. Cash. Or maybe something else. What if they knew I was home? What if that was the point? I think about the way they walked, slow but steady, not searching, not cautious, just walking like they knew exactly where they were going, like they'd been there before. Had they? Had this person watched our house, learned our schedules, waited for a night when they knew a 14-year-old kid would be home alone? And if so, what stopped them? Why did they walk past my room and leave instead of doing whatever they'd planned to do? Maybe it was the TV downstairs, a sign that I might not be alone after all. Maybe it was the light from my gaming setup leaking under my door, proof that someone was awake and alert. Or maybe it was something else entirely, some instinct or second thought that made them decide it wasn't worth it. Not tonight. I'll never know. And honestly, that might be the scariest part. Not knowing, not having answers. Just living with the knowledge that someone came into my home with unknown intentions, and I was completely vulnerable. If there's one thing I learned from that experience, it's this. Safety isn't something you can take for granted. It's not automatic, it's not guaranteed. It's something you have to actively maintain. Lock your doors every single time. Even if you're just running out to grab something from the car. Even if you're just going next door for 2 minutes. Lock your doors. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If you hear something that doesn't make sense, investigate safely or call for help. Don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it away. Have a plan. Know what you'd do in an emergency. Where would you hide? How would you escape? Who would you call? These aren't paranoid questions. They're practical ones. And most importantly, don't let fear control your life. But don't let comfort make you careless either. There's a balance between being paranoid and being prepared. Find that balance. Because the reality is, bad things can happen. They do happen. To regular people in regular neighborhoods, in regular houses. The world isn't as safe as we'd like to believe. But it's also not as dangerous as our worst fears imagine. Most days are just normal days. Most nights are just normal nights. Most unlocked doors stay closed. Most strangers walk past without looking twice. But sometimes, just sometimes, something goes wrong. And when it does, you want to be ready. You want to have taken the simple precautions that could make all the difference. I'm an adult now. I live in my own place, and I'm probably more security conscious than most people my age. Some friends think I'm paranoid. Maybe I am, but I'd rather be paranoid and safe than careless and sorry. I have good locks on all my doors. I have a security system. I have a plan for different scenarios. And I never, ever leave my door unlocked. Not even for a minute. When I hear sounds at night, I still get that spike of adrenaline. That instant recall of being 14 and hearing footsteps in my house. But now, I check my security system first. Verify that all doors and windows are secure. Then I can relax. Usually. I don't tell this story often. It's not exactly a fun party anecdote. But when I do share it, people always have the same reaction. At first, they're skeptical. Then they're scared. Then they start asking themselves the same questions I've asked 1,000 times. Do I always lock my doors? Do I pay attention to my surroundings? What would I do if someone came into my home? And honestly, if my story makes even one person more cautious, more aware, more prepared, then maybe it was worth living through. Because that person on that night could have been anyone. The house could have been any house. The unlocked door could have been your door. I still live in the same town. Same neighborhood even, though different house. Sometimes I drive past my old place and I look at it differently now. I see the front door and remember standing there with a pizza, too excited about gaming to turn a simple lock. I see the upstairs window to my old bedroom and remember sitting in the dark, frozen in my chair, listening to footsteps get closer and closer. And I see the driveway where the police car parked that night, lights off so as not to alarm the neighbors. 2 officers walking through our house, looking for evidence of something that left no trace. It looks like a normal house, because it is a normal house. Just like mine was, just like yours probably is.
The difference is, I know now what I didn't know then, that normal houses aren't safe just because they are normal. That bad things don't only happen in bad neighborhoods. That being young and alone doesn't make you invisible to people with bad intentions. It makes you a target. So I lock my doors, I check my windows, I trust my instincts, and I tell my story to anyone who'll listen. Because maybe, just maybe, my unlocked door and those footsteps in the dark can be the lesson someone else needs to hear before they have to learn it the hard way. Stay safe out there. Lock your doors, and if you ever hear footsteps when you're supposed to be alone, don't hesitate. Call for help. Get to safety. Trust that something is wrong. Because sometimes the monster isn't under your bed or in your closet. Sometimes the monster walks through your unlocked front door and climbs your stairs while you sit frozen in the dark, hoping they don't see you. I got lucky that night. The footsteps walked past my room. The shadow moved on. The door closed and the person left. But I know now that luck isn't a plan. Luck isn't security. Luck is just what you call it when you survive something that could have gone very, very differently. Don't rely on luck. Rely on preparation, on awareness, on those simple habits that separate a normal night from a nightmare. Because the scariest monsters don't announce themselves. They don't break down your door with noise and violence. They slip through the door you forgot to lock and walk through your house like they own it. And sometimes they walk right past you in the dark. This is what happened to me when I was 14 years old. This is the night I'll never forget. This is why I always lock my door. And after hearing this story, I hope you will too.